Good afternoon. I'm Professor Marjorie Panay at Cazenovia College. Every 4 years since 1984, the Washington Center for Internships and Academic Seminars has offered structured academic programs to students interested in the political process of the United States. This particular opportunity to experience such an academic seminar centered on attending one of the two national conventions. The Washington Center facilitated access for students to elements of each of the conventions, Republican and Democratic, for 2 weeks. In the first week, students pursued academic topics like the history of political campaigns, the nomination process, the convention planning, and media coverage. During the second week, students acted as participant observers, taking assigned tasks into various areas of the convention operations. Here at Cazenovia College, we were very excited about providing this opportunity to our students. Interested students were asked to follow a 3-step nominating process. First, to ask a faculty or staff member to sponsor their candidacy. Second, to write and submit a statement of interest. And third, to participate in an interview. 3 students followed through all steps and earned selection. In addition to participation in the seminar, each student earned 2 academic credits for their work at the convention. Now let's meet these students. Let's start with Emily.
My name is Emily Kotnik. I'm a senior in the Equine Business Management program, and I attended the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio.
I'm Justin Schmidt. I'm a senior in the Criminal Justice program. I attended the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio.
My name is Nicholas Stagnitti. I'm a senior in the Sport Management program with a minor in mathematics, and I attended the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Thank you all. Let's start with a few questions about your experience. First of all, why were you interested in attending the Republican or the Democratic National Convention? Emily, we might as well stay with this series.
I was interested in attending the Republican National Convention, one, because I felt this campaign season was going to be very interesting, and it has turned out to be, and also because it was in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. So I really was excited to see the different changes they had made, both in construction and just cleaning up the city in order to prepare for the event.
Justin?
I've always had a deep interest in politics, and I was really interested in seeing how a convention was handled and all the aspects that went into doing a convention, especially with how the whole political season has gone with all the dramatic turmoil, I guess you can say. I guess it was really it was a big interest to me to go see it.
Great. Nick?
Just like Justin, I've had an interest in politics since a very young age. Basically, I wanted to discover what it really took, like behind the scenes work to actually complete a successful convention. And I've never been to the city of Philadelphia before, so I was very excited to go there, experience what the city had, especially Temple University, where I stayed at, and the Wells Fargo Center, which was a great place to intern at for this experience.
Let's narrow things down a little bit and talk about some of the activities and events that you were involved in during the 2 weeks. We'll go back to Emily again.
All right, so the first week we spent a lot of time attending lectures and seminars. They had speakers that were political science professors, economists. There was a couple gender studies professors to explore the role of women in politics this year. And then the second week, I was actually placed with an event management firm. So I helped coordinate receptions with the delegations and getting delegations from one place to another.
Wonderful. Justin, what did you have for experiences?
Like Emily, the first week we basically went through all the academics and dealt with about 4 hours worth of lectures, and then we had the rest of the day to ourselves to do whatever we wanted to explore. Usually we went to like Cleveland to just walk around the city to see how they set up before the convention. Then the second week I worked along with the Texas delegation, and basically we would go in the morning and we were basically like security for the Texas delegation when the speakers came in. And then me and one of the fellow academic students were tasked with going and we got credentials to go to the convention center, and we got to walk around and meet a lot of people during the time that we were there.
Wonderful. Nick?
The first week was strictly seminars and speakers that came to Temple University. We also had class discussions on different political issues every day. So that was a very interesting experience, just meeting other fellow students that have interest in politics. And then the second week, I was at the Wells Fargo Center with Eurovision Americas, which is a telecommunication network in Europe. And there I escorted clientele from the outskirts of the perimeter inside of our network tent outside of the Wells Fargo Center. And I also helped set up and take down equipment for Eurovision Americas inside of their skybox in the Wells Fargo Center.
3 very different sets of experiences. Emily, can you select one experience that was your favorite?
Oh, there's so many. I think my favorite was actually working with the Florida delegation. We spent a lot of time with them because the firm I was with specialized with about 8 different delegations. And so after the first 2 days, we had started to get familiar with the different delegates, and there were a couple that really stood out. And I had a couple really good conversations with some of the delegates, just understanding their background, how they got to the position they're in, and making sure they were enjoying the time and trying to find out what was their favorite part of their job. So the connections you made, the personal connections you made, was definitely my favorite part.
Yeah, wonderful. Justin, what about you?
I would have to say, during the time I got to meet like a lot of high-ranking officials in the government, and I'd have to say meeting the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, was definitely one of my favorite parts during that whole entire experience. Or either on the first day when they were doing the roll call, I got to go down on the floor of the convention center and actually experience what the roll call was like, and it was chaos, as you can imagine if you watched it on TV. It was insane, and it was even more insane when you were there. And I would say that was definitely one of my favorite experiences, or most memorable.
Given all of the furor surrounding Ted Cruz during the Republican convention, did you ever meet Senator Cruz?
I was within, like, when I was actually there, the third day he showed up to actually speak in front of the delegation, and that was the day after he gave his whole big speech about how he wasn't endorsing Trump. And as you can imagine, a lot of the delegation was not too happy with him, and the security detail was really tight around him and wouldn't let anybody get close to him. But I was within like 20 feet, 30 feet of him when he actually showed up, which was pretty cool. But he was in and out real fast before anybody could actually talk to him.
Well, when I saw that in your early description, I thought, my goodness, what a good place to be. I didn't know about you and the Florida connection as well. Nick, your favorite experience?
I would say my favorite and most memorable experience would have to be witnessing history. And pretty much I was in the skybox above the Wells Fargo Center for Eurovision, and I got to look down when Hillary Clinton won the nomination for the Democratic Party, and it was really historical, just witnessing that moment and looking out in the crowd and seeing everybody who else participated in that single moment, and not many people can say that they have ever witnessed that before.
Yes, first woman candidate
Yes.
for the presidency. Reflecting on your experiences, what did you take away? What did you learn that you felt was important to bring back with you?
I was very impressed and actually very surprised to see that, especially considering how divided the Republican Party was coming into the convention, and even after the floor fight that first night over will they vote how their states voted or will they vote on their conscience, I was very surprised and actually impressed to see that they all managed to unite behind Trump at the very end. And that was good because it was a very divided party. That's a huge difference, and that was definitely something that was commendable.
Great. We can come together when we
can when you try.
When we try, right. Justin, what was your takeaway from your experience?
Basically the same as Emily. With both of us going to the convention, it was kind of like when we showed up there, it was kind of nerve-wracking to see how, like, getting all the threats and then having to deal with like the differences in the party, and actually going there and actually meeting people that had different views. Because when I first went, before I actually showed up, I was just like, everybody's going to be the same, have the same feelings and stuff. Everybody's going to be like thinking the same way as like. But once I got there, there was so many different views and everything, and it was, which showed how divided we really were, because just based off the kids and then actually meeting the delegates and talking to them, and then actually seeing them all come together was pretty cool. And it was an awesome experience, I think.
Great. The Democratic convention was somewhat different. So what did you take away from your experience?
From my personal experience, I definitely think that being confident about what you do will definitely get you far in life, especially in the convention hall. If you go up and act like you are very important, you can actually talk to different individuals. Like, I had to interview super delegates, a few regular delegates, a Secret Service officer, and different important political figures like that. And if you're very just confident and you have the demeanor that you are there and ready to succeed, and you definitely just meet people that you won't ever forget if you just sat back, because no one really comes to you. You have to go out and get what you want.
If each of you could summarize your experience in a few words, a brief statement, what would you say?
I would say it was a great experience and I learned a lot, and it was interesting coming from an outsider's perspective as someone who's an equine business management student. So it was an interesting perspective that I brought in, not having a whole lot of background. And also, just like Nick said, put yourself out there, act confident, and you will get to meet a lot of high-ranking officials.
You've mentioned a couple of times the condition of Cleveland, and I know you are usually from that area. What would you say about the city's ability to hold the convention and do it well?
I felt they did a very nice job. There were very few arrests. The couple were just protesters getting a little out of hand. The law enforcement there, which came from all over the country, did a very nice job. There was not a single time that you didn't feel safe walking around. They kept traffic moving very well. They headed incidents before they happened. And the city in general really put on a good show. It was very clean. Everyone was very welcoming. Even just the people walking around downtown that had nothing to do with the convention, that were just visiting downtown to go eat or whatever, they were very welcoming. And it was a good, proud Clevelander moment.
Great. If I remember correctly, was it the Republican convention that was so hot? And people were having to deal with the heat in lots of ways?
It was ridiculously hot.
It was between 90 and 95 every day.
And yet they still carried everything off that well, as you described.
Everything went really well, and I don't think I heard a single complaint about anything. Security was great. Getting into the perimeter took seconds. It took longer to get out than it did to get in. It was very good.
Well, that's great to hear, and I'm sure Cleveland will benefit in the long run from that kind of a picture. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, for me, to just summarize my experience, I learned a lot in the first week, just stuff that you wouldn't even really think of knowing about. Like we learned a bunch of different things with like different females that actually went into like politics, and you would think that like Hillary's the first one to get nominated by a major party, but there was like, we learned about several different ones that, like different women, even from like the late 1800s, that actually went in and actually tried to become president for different reasons, and that was like awesome. And then like just the second week when to describe that, like you met a lot of like high important people, and if you, like Nick said, if you just walked up to them and just acted like you were important, or actually if you were just dressed up nice and had the credentials, they would just instantly just start talking to you no matter what, and they would you would just get connections and stuff. Like we met a lot of different people, and the security was great. And like for like our delegation, we had 300, 400 people, and we were the biggest delegation there. And basically how like the Secret Service, when for us, would come up to us and tell us that if you really want us to go walk with you at night, because we would leave at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, they would tell us like, we'll walk with you to make sure that you're okay to get back to the train station. And like that was really cool, because like where we were compared to the train station, it wasn't really that far. It was like a mile maybe, but we have to go through alleyways and stuff like that. And it was at night in Cleveland, it was kind of scary, especially if you don't know where you're going.
Sure.
And like having them actually step up and just be like, you know, we'll walk you there, make sure that you're safe, was pretty cool.
So your comment about security linked into that as well.
And the firm I was working for actually hired an armed bodyguard to escort. There were 6 other interns from the Washington Center that were placed with the same firm, and they hired an armed bodyguard to escort us around after dark. So I didn't think it was necessary, but it was a very nice gesture. And even then, there were no questions ever as to whether we were safe or not.
Every street corner there was cops, and there was people, like there was like these bike gangs that were like, they called themselves Bikers for Trump. Would ride around, like there was thousands of them, and then there was people with like SUVs, like these heavily armored SUVs that had like 4 or 5 guys in it that had like fully auto weapons. Like there was just like, at no point when you were inside, like in that area, did you think that something would happen or you didn't feel safe. It was incredible. It was awesome.
Well, I think sitting at home watching it, I probably had greater concerns about the security than you all did there in place. And your takeaway from all of this?
I had a similar experience with the protesters. One night when I was leaving to go back to Temple University, the protesters were blocking off an entrance to the subway. So we had to walk down about 1.5 miles down the road to get to the next subway stop. And at the same time, it was pouring rain. So some of us were running, sprinting to the subway just because we were just completely drenched. So the protesters were a very big deal. But to summarize the experience in about a few sentences, I would say that it was probably one of the most influential 2 weeks I've had basically in my life, where I've learned so much, met so many different individuals. And I hope that my experiences, I can talk about them to different students who have the interest in politics here at Cazenovia College or in my future at any time.
Oh, and that leads us to the next question, which is, what information would you like to share with your fellow students here at Cazenovia about your experience or about what you learned there? You want to start us again?
All right. Definitely take advantage of anything that you have an opportunity to do, even if it doesn't exactly lie with your interests. One of my professors came up and suggested I apply for this, and I did, and I'm very glad I did. It was one of the best 2 weeks ever. I met so many interesting people, both the students I worked with and the officials that I met. It gave me a lot of connections. I already had a job offer come from it. Unfortunately,
Wonderful.
I had to turn it down because it started in August, but it's opened up a lot of doors for me, and it showed me that while I may not want to be actually in politics, the event management side and what I was doing with running the various events for different delegations was definitely something that would interest me in the future. So it doesn't lie with my degree, but it was definitely an interesting experience, and I really love what I did there. So definitely take advantage of any opportunities you get. You can't hurt to try.
Wonderful. Justin?
I would just go along with what Emily said, take advantage of what you're dealt, and then also don't be afraid to like speak your views. That's one thing that like you learned while you were there, is that like everybody has opposing views, but like everybody was open to accepting like how you thought about something. So don't be afraid to like say how you feel about a subject or anything like that. And like the connections that you got from this whole experience, like Emily said, like there's people that you're going to meet there that will give you job offers, or even like you'll get their cards and you can call them later on. Like I've got a person from Albany that works for the local politicians, and said he wanted me to help him out in his field office to help elect one of the local representatives. There was a person from this area, Claudia Tini. Her representatives wanted me to help out and work there too. So there was like, you got a bunch of connections, and it helps out in the future.
Now, I know you're headed for the service at some point. Did you see any connection between this experience and your aspirations for a military career?
When I was there, I got to speak with people like that were senators and that were former military, and I got to speak with them, and actually helped me, I guess, figure out what I wanted to do in the future, and how being in the military could actually help you in the future. And that's about all. I didn't really, other than that, was nothing really along the fact of like the military or along that.
I did see recently in the Cazenovia news that you were taking another step forward in your process. Where is it now?
It's still in the same process, because the actual boards don't come up until actually like within the next week. The first board comes up, and then the last one comes in November 14th. So I find out if I get selected within the next month, and then I go down January 7th if I do get selected. So it's nerve-wracking. This next month is going to be crazy, but yeah, that's basically the same I got signed my contract, which is a big, huge step, and then you gotta send it down to New York City, and then they get to choose whether or not they want to send you to Quantico, Virginia for
Okay.
training.
Now we'll be watching for what happens in the next month or so then. Nick, what would you like to share with your fellow students?
Well, besides the networking points and taking a chance on something that you're very unfamiliar with, I would have to say that people should definitely, if you're a student, you should definitely be involved with public policy and current events. You should be reading the New York Times every day. You should be discovering different websites that have news, like CNN. Try not to find too many websites that are biased. Try to stay on two sides of an issue, so you're very informed on both sides. And I would encourage everyone to definitely voice their opinion, either at the polls or just talking about public policy. If you're 18, you need to get your voice heard. You need to vote at the polls. People may say that their vote may not count, but as a majority, especially students aged 18 to 25, our vote counts a lot, and it makes a huge difference in the campaign.
Great, thank you. Well, then let me close with this. As the sponsor of this opportunity, I hoped that these students would come away with a greater understanding of how the convention's important parts of our democracy worked, and recognize the necessity of, as Nick mentioned a minute ago, registering to vote, and in this year, voting on November 8th. But also, I had hoped that they would come away with a personal commitment as they go forward with their careers in their communities, to stay interested in local, state, and national politics. And as far as I can tell from what they've said, that seems to be in their mind. So I'm very pleased with what they have come away with. Thank you all.